Roger that, Monitor. See you on the other side.
My name is Rafał Serafin, and I'm going to be moderating this panel. And I will introduce our panelists just in 1 second. But the idea is to have more of a conversation than many presentations. And what we're going to offer to you today is a perspective from different bubbles. And the perspective is on the city of Krakow, where we are. So it's a bit different to many of the other sessions, but why I think will become apparent as we move along. So first of all, I'd like to just introduce our panelists. I have here Krzysztof Gerlich, who was the deputy mayor back in the 1990s, the early 1990s, is now has been in business. Is concerned with urban development and this kind of thing. So this is a person who has been in several bubbles in his career. Next, I'd like to introduce Stanisław Mazur, who's the deputy mayor of Krakow. You met the mayor this morning. This is the deputy mayor, who's moved from the university bubble to the public sector bubble. So. Also experienced and learning the ropes as we speak. He will come back to him in a minute. And then we have Astrid Karlstein, who's from the United Nations Office of the UNHCR, which is the humanitarian High Commission, right? And an agency which is at its root has collaboration. What are they doing in Krakow? Well, we'll find out. But they're part of our landscape. Then we have, let's see. Oh, of course, Piotr Jabłoński, who's the Deputy Chancellor of our youngest university in Krakow, the Ignatianum University, which is part of also a global network of universities run by the Jesuit order. So also bringing the local and the global together. And then last but not least, we have John Lyons, who we've met already, who's a veteran of this particular sector, but has, I would say, become a Cracovian in many ways. So he also has a perspective which is a longer-term perspective. And he's been operating in the business services bubble. So we have different bubbles, and I think the first thing I'd like to explore with our panelists is this idea that the phrase beyond the bubble is a bit provocative because it suggests that it's actually better to reach out of the bubble in which you're in. And I think one of the things that I have learned that has become apparent in the time today and yesterday is that there's a lot of benefit in actually being in a bubble, lots of benefit. So the first thing I'd like to ask, and I'll start with Krzysztof here, is to ask about the benefit. What is the benefit of being in the bubbles that you've experienced in your career?
Well, it's so obvious that, in fact, the industry that is present here is the best proof that to be in the bubble is good and productive. In fact, when we look at the development of business services or tech industry in Krakow, the first thing that strikes me is that it's self-organizing process. It's self-organizing. It doesn't need so much, even a city, to be here. You, in terms of your expertise, your spreadsheets and so on, you make decisions, and the business makes decisions of locate here and In fact, what needs probably from outside of the bubble is a sort of certain services of Jones Lang LaSalle's and others that help you to find an office space or something like that. And it means that to be in the bubble it means that you focus on your own business, you do what you know, and you try to use the resources of the environment here to grow. So there are many advantages of focusing on your own job. In terms of trying to reach out of the bubble, it means that sometimes it's distracting. It's not useful, and to some extent the bubbles are good. The diversity of bubbles that we observe in Krakow, like the bubble of startups, the bubble of administration or of NGOs and things like that, they're okay. The problem may be later if you will look if it's effective or efficient in terms of things, how they develop in the city. Do we contribute to the, do we create added value or not by being here among the other bubbles?
Okay. Let's just stick with the bubble, the benefits of the bubble. I'd like to ask John, who's been in the bubble of the business services, highly successful company, sector, and clearly it's been a benefit just to be in the bubble.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Pan Christoph in that when you're working for, say, a corporation or an organization, you've got a clear set of objectives and things you have to do. And often you're on a very short time frame. Maybe it's on the quarter, maybe it's on a year, maybe it's on 3 years. So you kind of focus, a lot of it can be short term, and a lot of it can be very much tactical. I have to do this now or tomorrow or next month. So you can be within your corporate bubble, but then you're in an industry of similar bubbles on the business side, and you find that you're kind of not really integrating. You got lots of little bubbles. It's like I don't know if you know the Aero chocolate bar, where you've got like lots of little bubbles, and that's how you are. And you don't really cooperate, maybe with the other corporations as well, because you see them as competitors. And then also, even inside your own organization, you can also have other smaller bubbles as well. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, there's a security of working on the things that you know, or that you can do, or that you can control yourself. But there are sometimes you have to think about going outside of that.
Great. Let's ask Piotr. I'd like to ask him, who's being in line to become an important person in the Ignatianum, but has just come back 2 months ago from Boston.
Yes.
And he's been on all sorts of other places, so he's learning Krakow anew. And so let me ask you, we live in a world of silos increasingly, and coming to Krakow, what's the benefit of being in the Ignatianum bubble?
You know what, to be honest, I have a difficulty to come back to this bubble because the benefit from traveling all around the world, so being in Copenhagen, then coming back to Warsaw, then moving to Boston, and then coming back here, which was my home for 3 years before Copenhagen, I feel like I'm making a lot of trouble to people that I'm working with or living with, because I'm asking a lot of questions why, and they don't like it. And this question is coming from the outside of the bubble, and it's making a lot of confusion. It's also about producing a lot of tension. Why you want to change things, why you are questioning what we're doing. This is the way how we proceed. And my question is not about destroying the structure, it's more about trying to understand what's going on. So this experience I have right now, it shows me clearly that living within the bubble, it's a time when you have a lot of, to translate literally the Polish expression, święty spokój, you have a lot of sacred peace. Yeah? And you have a sense of control, but it's very easy to produce local or global event that can show you that this control is actually, there is a lot of faults in this. Yeah.
Thank you. One of the reasons it's comfortable and beneficial to be in a bubble is because we insulate ourselves from the outside. And so I'd like to ask Astrid from the UNHCR, who is maybe in a bubble, but well, what do you think about this? You know, what is it that you're bringing?
As the United Nations High Commissioner, we cannot be in a bubble because an influx of refugees affects the whole society, all the different areas. It affects education, labor markets, social services. And our role is to support the government, host government, so in this case Poland, to respond to the needs of refugees and to also seek durable solutions. Our role is also to coordinate, meaning to support the coordination of the refugee response led by the government. And that's how, as an organization, we work. My representative in Warsaw works at ministerial level, but at my level, for Krakow, we cover 5 voivodeships. We work with voivodeship office, marshal office, with municipality. We also work with academics. So, for example, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Krakow University of Economics, with Jagiellonian University. We also work with our donors, of course, consuls generals here in Krakow. We work with NGOs, with refugee-led organizations, but of course we also work with private sector, and the role of the private sector for UNHCR is various. Private sector could be for UNHCR donors, so funding, but in funding, but also in kind. So we have seen that during the influx, and still now, many private and companies, as the members of Aspire, have contributed to the response, either by, for example, we had a collaboration with Uber, who provided transportation for refugees, for our staff. We had masks for storage, but also Aspire is contributing through the education hubs, those who were at the gala yesterday, so that Ion went beyond your bubble. You even got the award. And we have our colleagues from Akamai here. The education hubs are an important support for refugee children that first attended school often online and needed a space to be able to study, but also a space to be able to get out of their isolation and mingle with colleagues. It's also an opportunity for aspiration for the future. And so we work also, as Aspire works like glue between the different companies, we also work as somehow the glue between the different actors that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I think one of the interesting things is that we have these different realities in Krakow. So I think one of the estimates I heard is that about 1 in 5 jobs is in your sector, in this sector. But we also have 1 in 5 Cracovians are Ukrainian. So when Astrid talks about the refugees and the existing Ukrainian community in Krakow, it's not a small thing, it's a big thing. And this leads me to ask the mayor, who is mayor not for very long, but his in-tray, I am sure, is full of many different things, and staying in the bubble is not an option. So maybe it was good being a rector, but now, so how do you see these? Can you run a city with different bubbles being separate from each other?
So thank you for having me here. I would like to start by saying that, living in the given bubble is a comfortable position. But at the same time, this position just, prevents you from understanding the complex world. When you look from the perspective of a given bubble, just you can see a part of the picture. When you can see only a part of the picture, you cannot understand the world. So it implies that you are not able, to make a good decision because you just don't understand the world. You just cannot, figure out with complexity. So my perspective and my experience is just, showing that the only way you can try to build something, you can try to change something, just better economy, better society, you need to move, among various bubbles. It's a unique experience. And from this perspective, from this point of view, I try to work at Krakow, at city. And I think that such position and such, let's say, approach to solving, let's say, economic, social problem is beneficial. And what is important is also to have a competence or ability to communicate among various bubbles. Because what I see now from the position I'm holding now is there's a problem of communication. We just exchange words, thoughts, but sometimes I have a feeling that we are talking about quite different issues. Mm-hmm. What is really needed, and this is the last comments at this turn, is just try to understand each other, to build common vocabulary, and try to agree something. So the last thought is just try to build a real and just working partnership.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that has become apparent also in this conference is that this idea that some people say, oh, well, no one's collaborating, we need to go beyond the bubble. That in fact it's false, because if you talk to individual companies, you're all doing something. There is a lot of collaboration that's going on. But I think one of the big questions is beyond the bubble is the partnership, as the mayor said. It's a partnership that's based on sharing costs and risks and benefits, but the benefits we're interested in are the city of development. So transportation, pollution, the people who don't have housing, many things that don't really affect the business services sector, but the business services sector has a lot to contribute. So how do we go beyond the bubble to create partnerships which are about sharing costs and risks? So not corporate social responsibility, something nice to have, but can we have a collaborative city? How can we do these partnerships? So this is my next question, and maybe I'll start with John this time. And we were talking about this yesterday. How would you kind of move or make more explicit, more strategic these partnerships that are already happening with your company, with other companies?
Well, yeah, I think if you look at the business services sector, the people working there are the citizens of Krakow and the area around Krakow. So therefore, they are people who are directly interested in what happens in the city where they live. It can be transportation, it can be education, it can be traffic, pollution, whatever. What I find is that you can have your bubbles, but like the refugee crisis, your bubble got broken because something came from the outside and you had to react, or you felt you had to react. And the reason why was because the people who work with you, they felt they wanted to do something. And we saw these huge voluntary actions by individuals everywhere around the country. And then, corporations said, well, listen, let's try to organize around that and do something in a structured way, as well as what individuals were doing. So that's where your bubble got broken. And then in terms of cooperation, there's many corporations which are doing different things. And often we don't share with people what we're doing. You know, so it's about forums of awareness. Like, for example, we do blood transfusions with Cisco, which are in the building next to us, but maybe there's other companies would maybe take part in that initiative. Blood donations, not transfusions. But, yeah, sorry. Maybe other firms would take part in that if they knew we were doing it, for example, or supporting Centrum Administracyjne Numer 1, where we help kids with homework, or, you know, and there's other centres maybe on the other side of the city are doing some great things that we don't even know about. And then there's also, you know, you'll have your objectives inside your corporation and you need to go so far, but at a certain point then you need help to find resources or to share resources. For example, intern programs. Everybody needs interns, and then the universities want their students to get job opportunities. And how do we match the supply with the demand? Maybe in a central way, rather than everybody doing everything independently themselves, which is maybe less efficient. But look, I think a big piece is the sharing and the communication and making people aware of what the other parties, be they the schools, the universities, the city, the charities, the NGOs are doing. I think it's a lot about just sharing information.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Let me come back to Krzysztof here, who remembers the time when he was mayor, there was no business services sector. So there are some of us who remember when the biggest employer was the steel plant, and we weren't in the European Union, and we live in a different world today. But one of the things from that time that I remember was we had to create institutions, the city bureaucracy, the business community, and so on. So there was a lot of openness, whereas today we seem to be siloed, more in silos. Maybe it's a sign of success, but I'd like to ask Krzysztof, thinking back from all that time, what is your opinion?
Opinion on what? Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, obviously cooperation is good, everybody knows. Diversity also, so there are many bubbles, that's fine. But I think that one thing is a little bit, we should be very careful about, is not to use too much of partnership things, because partnership already, yes, as you said, is already sharing risks and costs and things like that. And if you talk with business people, they're always very cautious about it. You know, it's the partnership is not something that. Let's talk about a platform in which we exchange information, at least. Yes, that was. You probably remember the Krakowskie Forum Rozwoju that existed in early 90s, such a platform in which companies, but also administration talked together about problems and things. And I think that there was a session here before us now, how we envisage Krakow tech industry in 2040. And instead of talking about what is going to be in 2040, the people here were talking about how they should find a platform to exchange information, because there is a big business, corporations, but there are also startups in tech industry. There is a place in which theoretically they could meet. It means Krakowskie KPT, Park Technologiczny, and other. There is also a city as a bubble in a way, and when we look at the corporations and the city, the relationship exists, of course, but I see also a loss of potential in the lack of cooperation with small businesses, startups, and big business. We have a plan, the mayor will probably mention that, we have many plans the new government has related to digital development of the digital society, so to say, where the city would like to see much more integration in IT systems, but also in opening the systems to the citizens. And so there are many things in which, just by exchanging information about the potentials, knowledge, global experience, or rather, would be good to bring some added value to it. So I think that, let's say, the partnership is a big word, but between what is today with the bubbles and the partnerships, there is, we just need a platform in which we would meet and talk about what we do and what we would like to do in order to get scale, of course. So it's not only the question that things are not visible, but they're not to right scale. That's what we need to change.
Okay, and they're dispersed, scattered. And I think it's important to discipline ourselves about the words, because collaboration is often about shifting risk and cost onto someone else. The city, NGOs are very good at this. So partnerships, there are very few partnerships where you really genuinely and they share risks and costs and benefits. But you need to start somewhere. They don't happen on their own. And this is as an observer and fan of Aspire, this is what Aspire is all about, incubating these kinds of relationships and partnerships. But I'd like to go back to Astrid now, because one of the things that needs to be sharing and responded to is not just information and competencies of the industry that we're interested in, but also what's happening outside. So we have a war. We heard about that yesterday, but I think I'd like to draw attention at this moment to another thing that's happened, which is our government has announced an immigration strategy, a migration strategy on Saturday. I'm sure you've heard the headlines: take back control, protect, assure security. That's the title. A 30-page document. So if you forget the title for the moment, the 30-page document will be expanded with legislation and so on. So it will actually affect all of us in Krakow. So maybe you could, because Astrid, you're following this, because it affects in a way, the motivation is the refugees, but the outcome may not be good for all of us if we just wait. Maybe there's an opportunity to actually respond to this as a collaborative group.
Yes. Thank you very much for the question. Very relevant and timely. So indeed, for us, the national security and the border security is not incompatible with access to territory, access to asylum, which are basic principles of the Refugee Convention that Poland signed. And in order to show actually the impact of the refugees and the benefit, the added value of having a welcoming approach and supporting the inclusion of refugees, UNHCR has asked Deloitte to do a study on the impact of the refugees from Ukraine on the economy of Poland. So the analysis is based on 2023 and indicates that, and also thanks to the fact that the Polish authorities have very swiftly taken legal measures to integrate the refugees into Poland with the Special Act. So this is the Temporary Protection Directive of Europe that has been translated in the national legislation. Refugees have very quickly been able to work, and have actually contributed to the GDP of Poland in 23 of 0.7% to 1.1%, with the perspective for a bigger increase in the future, reaching 0.9 to 1.35% of the GDP. Refugees have also contributed in boosting the tax revenues, so the government revenues have increased thanks to the refugees working and contributing to the economy. So in 22, the government revenues increased with from 10 to 13 billion zloty, and in 23 from 14 to 19 billion zloty. And that is actually more than what the state paid to receive and support them in 22, which was 15 billion, and then in 23, 5 billion billion zloty. So in fact, they are contributing more than what they have cost.
And I think it's also worth saying that the UNHCR and the NGOs and groups around them are monitoring this migration strategy as it develops. You know, we had a meeting at the Labour office, you know, the other day, and this is an example of information sharing. Because if you're running a business, if you're running a sector which depends on foreign nationals, and we heard in Ireland it's 70% in the earlier session, then it's important to monitor this. But why not have an information sharing with an organization that is actively following this?
Yes, I wanted to also mention that because, and I'm very glad that yesterday Aspire was present at the conference organized by the Regional Labour Office, because what we see as UNHCR is that there can be more collaboration between the public sector and the private sector. For the moment, for example, now funding becomes available by the European Commission for Poland, and the Regional Labour Office will establish 4 integration centers in each voivodeship. So, I mean, for Malopolski, it will be in Kraków, in Tarnów, in Nowy Sącz, and Auschwitz. And in these integration centers, refugees, migrants will be able, and Polish citizens will be able to benefit from training opportunities, from upskilling, reskilling. And so I heard this today, I mean, in several panels, Heineken mentioned that there were gaps in finding the right people for the right job. And so it's also an opportunity now that as private sector, and maybe Aspire can be your speaker and advocate, you could communicate to the labor offices what are the needs that what are the trainings that you see, how can we upskill the knowledge and experience of refugees from Ukraine, refugees from other nationalities. So that was an information sharing. What we also often see, and without criticism, is that between voivodeship and self-government, so municipalities, sometimes also there is information gaps. So we are often, as I mentioned, the glue, and also try to. So we were also very pleased yesterday that municipality was present to implement this integration strategy for Malopolski and Kraków.
So in another way, the UNHCR has a convening power. You know, when you get invited, you come. Just like the mayor, you know, has a convening power. When Aspire invites, the businesses come, but no one else. But let's just switch gears for a moment before we let the mayor offer the newest university in Kraków. How are you going to position your programs going forwards? We already have many fine universities. What is your thinking, having participated in this today?
2 things are coming to my mind. First of all, to follow what you mentioned about Ukrainian. I think this is a very interesting topic when it comes to analyze it from the perspective of the university. but it can be easily used in a very old-fashioned way and to become boring. Yeah. But it's interesting to use intellectual curiosity and to try to evaluate the presence of Ukrainian refugees in Poland from, for example, from the perspective of American social justice system, and how American higher education contributed to understand social injustice through the lens of oppression, racism, gender inequality. And this is something unique here in Poland, but to cross the bubbles, I think that aspire and maybe to think broader, anyone in IT tech is well educated or well prepared through corporational language to talk about social justice with the terms like oppression, intersectionality, anti-racism movement, ableism. So this is one issue which I think we are very interested in to start something like that. And the second is much more local, and it's about Wesoła district and what's going on. Just to follow what you said about awareness and reading what's going on around us. By fate, our university is in the middle of the district that is going through the reinvention process. And as far as I know, as far as to my knowledge, and I try to be very deep in my analysis, this is the first time in the history of the world when we have the attempt to create creative and cultural district, and we have the university on or in the territory where this district is going to be created. And to be open to this cooperation, and now I'm using this word with all the bias issues you mentioned before, this cooperation is becoming really interesting. Yeah. I started my job 2 months ago, so to go there and to start to talk with Wesoła district and the whole movement around this topic, in my opinion, this is very promising for both sides. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have some minutes still left, and I think it's time to think about what happens next. And one of the things that the city is working on, the city of Krakow, is a strategy. There is a very big document, a strategy document, but strategies are not just documents. So the question to the mayor is, if convening is important, if bridging bubbles is important, what is the place for that in the strategy in terms of your, how are you thinking about this? I'm not expecting it. How are you thinking about this, whether it's even on the agenda of your strategy, our strategy?
Thank you for this question. I realized that actually we decided, to initiate the process of building a new strategy. We see this process as a way how we can also overcome, barriers resulting from living in bubbles. It's a very inclusive process. We are at the beginning. Actually, we are in the middle of the process, and the process is led in a just, great way, perfect way by President Gerlich. There's a huge number of experts, but I think that over the following weeks we'll be able, just to go outside, say, let's talk about the strategy. This discussion is not just discussion about the documents. It's what is much more important is a process. We do our best, to involve as many as possible actors in this process. And from our point of view, this strategy is a kind of our dream about the future. For the first time, this strategy was really put in place and changed the city. We see it as a good place. It's a good moment. It's a turning point for Krakow. Krakow has gained international recognition. It's a very promising place. People just want to live here. Investors just coming here and ask about the possibility to invest this money. It's a unique moment in history. And it's up to now how this specific moment, we will make use of it. And from this point of view, strategy is absolutely primary, is absolutely priority for the city authority. And we hope that this process will be carried out over 5-6 months, and then we'll be able to conclude this process. But I would like to stress it very clearly. We really want to be a very open process, but what is important, it's our goal to make it process very workable. So we try to combine our vision and our goals with very practical documents, budgetary documents, management, information system. So it's a kind of complex rebuilding of city. And I would be more than happy just to see you involved in the process. And I hope that we have a lot of changes to discuss various issues, also very important, which just is it something it could be essential for such businesses are presented here in this room. Because just my last thought, I think that we live in a very disfragmented world. And this world is characterized by unpredictability, by tensions, conflict, different values. And I strongly believe that if we will not be able to find a compromise, to strike a compromise and to agree on something, on the vision and goals, we cannot manage to change the city. And that's why I am here. I just decided to leave, comfortable work at the university and I'm here at the city, try to transfer the city.
Okay, thank you. So the strategy is more of a framework and an invitation to a conversation. All good conversations are never finished. So we have an invitation. We have a few minutes left. You've heard from a diversity of individuals who have their own networks. Would anyone like to ask a question, make a comment, volunteer to be part of the conversation? Go ahead.
Do we have any plan, for example, to analyze the needs of the business, the roles that we're looking for to fill in our companies, and the talent that we have among the refugees, so that the city and United Nations and the business can work together on upskilling or reskilling towards that need in the business that we see, where we seek the professionals. How do we link it all together so all of us can benefit? Are we thinking about such a platform to at least collect this data where we could all have access to and help as a business to build the skill set that we are looking for and help people that are looking for their place in society and in Krakow? How to start?
Okay. Well, I think we've started, okay, yes. So Astrid, go ahead.
Well, the government of Poland was very fast in registering all the new arrivals in 2022, and that was very helpful because very quickly after, refugees could benefit from the PESEL allowances. However, now that we are a bit later, the ideal situation would be that the government launch a more thorough registration so that we go beyond the basic data that we have and could indeed collect more information about the professional background, about the language skills, about education background. So that's a recommendation. Of course, it needs a plan and a process, but other governments have done that, and it would also, other EU members can share this experience.
But there is a process in place, which Astrid referred to earlier, which the Labour Office is driving, and the money is from the national government. So every voivodeship in Poland has a budget to invest in shaping the labour market.
Yes.
That's the idea. So a lot of money will be spent. This is why the integration strategy, this 30-page document, is important, because more money will come. But if, as we sit here, we are complacent, not actively engaging, then it will just be another initiative. I think we can make it into something that really serves the region, shapes the labour market. And I think Aspire, through the EduHubs, is already participating, because we know after a year and a half of these EduHubs, we know the challenges that these young people are facing, what they need and so forth. You know? So I think with that.
Yes, about that also, in fact, as our role is often to be the glue between different actors, we also saw that many refugees are not informed, for example, of the opportunities that Powiat and Powiat labor offices are offering to job seekers. So we, through our NGO partners, we encourage refugees to go and register at the Powiat labor offices. And there they actually need to give all their details, background, information about academic and professional skills and background, so that they can better match. So there was also the Ministry of Digitalization that wanted to establish an employment platform. Yeah, different, I think we need still to look at.
Once you start digging in the public sector, you know, and this is the information that the city can bring, there's all sorts of information, opportunities, and so on. So we come back to this idea of how do we share information so that, you know, when sea level rises, you know, all the boats get higher, you know, no one's left behind. And I think this is the next step. And I think this was the invitation from the mayor with the framework of the strategy. Anyone else? We have, time is up. We have to go home. So thank you very much for our panelists for this discussion.